What is up, my friends? Welcome into Flippin' Bats. We got a couple days left of the regular season. Last game of the season's on the 29th. Legitimately just less than 2 weeks away. A lot's happened around the game. We got a lot to talk about today. One, are the Dodgers good enough to win the World Series? We'll break that down. We'll talk about that. Shohei Ohtani, should he pitch in October? He has not been ruled out from pitching, but should he? We're going to talk Paul Skenes, Jackson Chourio, and Jackson Merrill. If you're starting a franchise tomorrow and you can pick one of the three NL Rookie of the Year candidates, who are you taking? I mean, they're all 22 years old or younger. Who are you going to take there? That's a fun conversation. Power rankings came out Monday. We'll talk about some of the movement there and some fan questions at the end. So, going to be a really fun show today. A lot happened around the game, though, over the weekend. One, Heliot Ramos. I've always loved this fact. This was one of my favorite fun facts around the game of baseball. Since the Giants Stadium has opened, so currently Oracle Park, since Oracle Park opened in 2000, in the year 2000, there has not been a single right-handed hitter that has hit a ball into McCovey Cove. Splash hit into McCovey Cove. Had never happened until this weekend. Heliot Ramos, first right-handed hitter to ever do it, which is wild. So congrats to him. Got that done. Another thing, this was wild. A catcher in the minor leagues, his name's Derek Bender, 6th-round pick just a couple months ago, signed for $300,000, was caught giving the opposing team the pitches. He was behind the plate. He was giving signs, like telling the batter what pitches were coming. And he has been released by the Minnesota Twins. And I just don't see how he's gonna get signed by anybody. I mean, he's literally throwing games, and the reasoning behind it all was because he wanted to go home and he didn't want his minor league team to make the playoffs. So he's giving the opposing team the pitches. How he got caught is it was actually Lakeland. It was my former team, and my former manager is still the manager of the team there. So I was like, oh man, I got to get to the bottom of this. But apparently what was happening is given the signs, and then after the game, the coaches on Lakeland told the coaches for Minnesota's team, what was happening. So I was like, man, I got to talk. Anyway, ended up reaching out to my former coach about all of this and said, wait a second, the catcher was giving you guys signs, literally telling the batter what was coming. And he literally just said, apparently we were told not to say anything, and we need to let Minnesota's organization speak on it. We're not allowed to. Understandable, but I had to try. Didn't get much of an answer. But what a wild story. 6th-round pick in what, June? Just July, a couple months ago? 6th-round pick signs for $300,000, and you're behind the plate. You don't want your minor league team to make the playoffs, so you give the opposing team the pitches. Now, here's what I'll say. This is a crazy story. This story. It is crazy. I am not shocked. I'm not. I played in the minors for 5 years. I have seen some stuff. I have seen things play out in real life. The thing is, and if I'm being brutally honest, here's the thing. You go from playing college baseball, where you play as essentially a family, right? Every day you play for each other, you play for the school, you want to win together, you want to get to the playoffs, you want to get to regionals, you want to get to super regionals, you want to get to the College World Series, and then you get drafted and it immediately becomes a business, right? I'm teammates with this guy. I played outfield, right? I'm teammates with this outfielder to my right, but I want to do better than him. I want to make it to the big leagues. Like, how well do I really want him to do? It becomes this weird philosophy. And essentially your goal is to make it to the big leagues. It's not to make it to the playoffs in a minor league season when you could go home earlier. So you end up seeing a lot of interesting, there's players that want to make the playoffs and there's players that don't. Tipping pitches and giving some to the opposing team is one that I have not seen, but there are some stories that I could tell for days. But a wild story. He is released. He just got signed a couple months ago for $300,000. Gets to keep all of that money, but dream thrown out the window essentially immediately. You work your whole life, however old he is, 20 some years. You work your whole life to be a baseball player, go to college, get drafted, become a big leaguer. And he got really close. And I mean, apparently there's more details to it, and we'll continue to learn more. But from what I see, you got really close and threw it all away in just a wild, wild situation. So just a lot of interesting things happened around the weekend. But let's get to it. Let's talk Los Angeles Dodgers. Are the Los Angeles Dodgers good enough to win the World Series? Once again, it is almost October, and the Dodgers pitching rotation is currently being held together by duct tape and rubber bands. I mean, it's a nightmare for their rotation right now. You have Tyler Glasnow injured and out for the year. That's the big news as of a couple days. Tyler Glasnow sprained elbow, I believe, and out for the year. Gavin Stone is on the IL. Clayton Kershaw on the IL and unlikely to return in the regular season. They're saying they're hopeful he can pitch again, perhaps in the postseason. But what are you going to? He's not pitching again in the regular season. He's not going to be a starter, and he hasn't been the most effective this year in the playoffs in his career. So what are we hoping for out of Clayton Kershaw? Probably not going to get much there. Emmett Sheehan done for the year. Dustin May done for the year. Yamamoto has just come back from an injury. Bobby Miller has a 12.54 ERA in the last couple of weeks and an 8.17 ERA on the season. He was supposed to be a guy for you. So this rotation for the Dodgers, this rotation is set to be Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who has just returned from injury, followed by a pipe dream of what things could potentially be. You're in trouble. And I look at this Dodgers team, and this is why I said it before this season. And I've continued to say it. I've said it for a few years, and I have not yet been wrong. Where's the pitching coming from this team? You could see it in the future. You were hopeful signing Yamamoto turns into good things, but he was injured for a lot of the year. He looked really good when he came back, and he looks like he could be a guy in the postseason. But Shohei's out for this year. You signed Tyler Glasnow to what, 30 plus $million a year. And he is unfortunately an injury prone guy. So you're just dealing with a lot of injury prone guys in the rotation. And I actually think the front office deserves a good bit of blame here for putting together a rotation that is for sure really good when healthy, but one of the more injury-prone rotations as well. So, yeah, there's been a lot of misfortune, right? The unfortunate injuries have come up. But how unlucky is it, really? Injuries oftentimes are, man, we had a really injury-plagued year. But you look at the rotation that you headed into the year with, and you say, yeah, of course injuries came up. So here's what I'll say. Are the Dodgers good enough to win the World Series? Screw the World Series. The Dodgers might not be good enough to win the National League West. You got the San Diego Padres breathing down their neck as we're recording on Monday afternoon. 3.5 game lead there. Padres are close. Dodgers rotation isn't good. Dodgers playoff rotation isn't going to be good. So there's a real conversation that I think needs to be had come the offseason. A couple things. Well, one, you put $1 billion plus into this team in the offseason with Shohei and Yamamoto, $1 billion plus. And in my opinion, you're gonna have another exit in the playoffs at the hands of an NL West team in either the first or the second round. As things currently line up, you're gonna have to face, or no, the first round's gonna be probably the matchup of NL West teams, Padres, Diamondbacks, and then that next round. I think right now I would take either of those teams to beat the Dodgers. Their pitching's just not good enough, not where it needs to be. Walker Buehler has dealt with injuries. You need him to be a guy in the playoffs. And so many of those other injuries, you don't know what you're going to get out of Yamamoto returning from an injury. Hasn't been back for long. Looked really good when he came back, but he's going to lead the way for a rotation that has so many question marks behind it. The bullpen has so many question marks behind it. So are the Dodgers good enough to win the World Series? No, they're not. Are the Dodgers good enough to win the NL West? I'm not so sure about that. As of right now, I would say the Dodgers should win the NL West, but I don't see them reaching the World Series, if I'm being completely honest. They need a lot of help. Um, Injuries have played a huge role, but of course they have. I mean, you have a lot of injury played guys in the rotation. So October is going to be interesting for the Dodgers. They're going to need to score 10 runs a game. They can do it. Their offense is unbelievable. I mean, they've been fantastic offensively. So this conversation is more about my uncertainty and not believing in what they have and what they're going to be able to throw out pitching wise. Bobby Miller needed to be a guy, and he can't get anybody out this year. The dude throws upper 90s with nasty stuff, and he can't get outs. The rotation is a huge problem. The offense is really, really good, but October baseball is different baseball. You're not going to put up 10 runs a game against really good pitching. It's just not going to happen. So that's what I got on. Are the Dodgers good enough to win the World Series? I say no. But another thing, speaking of the Dodgers, conversation happened a couple days ago with the manager of the Dodgers, Dave Roberts, on could we potentially see Shohei Ohtani pitch in October? And his answer wasn't no. Shohei Ohtani has not been ruled out to pitch in the 2024 postseason. Dave Roberts said he's not ruling it out. He said, I wouldn't put it past Shohei Ohtani to have an eye on the postseason. His rehab from his elbow injury and elbow surgery has been going really well. He's been progressing naturally and properly from this surgery. And he got it at this point. It's right at a year, I think, but probably a little bit over a year ago. If he continues, he's throwing off of a mound at this point. So the natural conversation came up in a conversation with Dave Roberts, like, hey, could we see this happen? I mean, the Dodgers need pitching help. So, I think there would be a world, and he even mentioned it. I mean, pretty poetic, right? If Shohei's coming out of the bullpen in a big game, late October, World Series, ninth inning, in comes Shohei Ohtani from the bullpen. And I agree with that, right? That's a storybook ending. We got that in the World Baseball Classic. Shohei comes trotting in out of the bullpen to close out the World Baseball Classic against Mike Trout. This would be a terrible idea. Shohei Ohtani absolutely should not pitch in October. We're dealing with his second elbow injury. He had Tommy John a few years ago, and then this elbow surgery, whatever we're calling it, had another one. Now you're rehabbing again from a second elbow surgery, and I don't think maybe it wouldn't be rushing him back, but I don't think throwing him back into a game for the first time in over a year in a situation he would be uncomfortable with, right? Coming out of the bullpen isn't something that he often does. He's more of a starter, knows how to warm up properly as a starter. Then we're dealing with his first ever playoff appearance as a pitcher, would be out of the bullpen. And again, a situation he's not comfortable with. And I've said it a million times. My brother talks about it all the time. Throwing one pitch in the postseason is essentially two pitches in the regular season. One inning of postseason pitching is like 2 innings of regular season pitching. Everything is amplified. So when dealing with this injury, that I want him to come back and be healthy for years. I want him to be a pitcher in the Dodgers rotation, a healthy pitcher for a long time to come. Right when he's able to come back from that, we're going to put him in a situation that he's probably not super comfortable with. When rehabbing, I just don't think it's smart. Everybody knows this. I'm the biggest Shohei Ohtani fan on the planet, other than his family and his wife and his agent. You'd be hard pressed to find a bigger Shohei Ohtani fan, but I would love to see him pitch in the postseason, right? I just don't think it's smart. And that's where I'm coming from here. Coming back from this injury, I know everybody's talking about it. I know Dave Roberts isn't ruling it out. I know Shohei's probably not ruling it out. If I know Shohei like I do, the guy's not ruling it out. But I'm just not sure it would be the smartest thing in the world. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope he takes the full offseason to recover. If you remember a few years ago, this was sort of the timing with my brother coming back from Tommy John surgery. It was, okay, he had it about a year ago. Technically could come back for the playoffs and push it, but he decided it wasn't an easy decision, decided not to do that, decided to go into the offseason and be able to treat it like a typical offseason, not a rehabbing offseason, but a typical, okay, I'm going to treat this as my typical offseason as I would and get ready for the regular season. Came back that next year and won the AL Cy Young Award and had one of the greatest seasons of all time. I think Shohei Ohtani should opt for that route, not rush it back for the playoffs, shut it down pitching wise for the year, continue your rehab, and then have the offseason to treat it as a typical offseason and come back strong and healthy next year for a Los Angeles Dodgers rotation that is desperately going to need him to be very good. Those are my thoughts there on the Dodgers. Next up, NL Rookie of the Year. What a race this has been all year. Really, for a lot of different reasons. You start by saying, well, Jackson Merrill, who was my pick to win Rookie of the Year, made the opening day rosters, came out of the gates hot in those couple games in Korea, and then power kind of fell off a little bit, and then just on an absolute tear since. Jackson Chourio comes up, makes the opening day roster. Not great, and then has really turned it on. Paul Skenes did not make the opening day roster, but has been phenomenal since coming up. So a genuine question in my mind, and this is why I thought of this, just sitting on the couch watching baseball thinking, man, these guys are studs. If I'm starting a team tomorrow, if I'm starting a franchise tomorrow and can pick any one of these three guys, Paul Skenes, Jackson Chourio, Jackson Merrill, who am I taking? And the conversation, I think everybody should like. It really isn't an easy conversation. Look, you got Paul Skenes, 22 years old, certainly an ace of a staff type pitcher, already an ace of a staff at 22 years old. I think saying ace of a staff type pitcher isn't doing him justice. He's going to be a perennial all-star. I think the ceiling for Paul Skenes is a Hall of Famer, right? I mean, I know he's 22 and just came up, but this is one of the best prospects we've ever seen. And he's gone above and beyond since we've seen him in the big leagues. So we're talking about a perennial all-star, ace of a staff kind of pitcher that has Hall of Fame potential. At 22 years old, 10-2 with a 2.1 ERA, has 151 strikeouts and 120 innings. Then you have Jackson Merrill, 21 years old, playing in elite center field, hitting 288 with 23 homers, 85 RBIs when he's hitting at been for the majority of the year hitting in the bottom half of the lineup, 85 RBIs there, an 816 OPS, 16 stolen bases. Outfield's been phenomenal, 8 outs above average out there, one of the best defensive center fielders in all of baseball, left-handed hitter, which I love. Shortstop by trade, moved to center field to help the team out this year, but I think there's a world in which he eventually moves back to his primary position. But who knows? Honestly, who knows? We saw Tatis move to the outfield for the Padres last year, move to right field, win the Platinum Glove. We saw Jackson Merrill move to the outfield from shortstop this year and playing in a well above average center field. One of the best center fielders in the game of baseball. And left-handed hitter, which I love. So either way, he's playing a premium position. Shortstop, center field. He's a freak of an athlete. Love him. And then you have Jackson Chourio, who's only 20 years old, turned 20 this recently. Hitting 276 this year with 21 homers, an 808 OPS, 20 stolen bases. He's the youngest player ever to reach 2020. Man, I mean, you start looking at it, and he's playing right field. Been fantastic since he really turned his season around. So the conversation becomes who you taking? And for me, I think the answer is you're taking Jackson Merrill. I love Jackson Chourio and what he's brought to the team. I just love that Jackson Merrill plays an elite up the middle position. I've loved his approach at the plate since I saw him in that Korea series. A young kid making the opening day roster, hits a homer in that series. I just thought his approach was unbelievable. That's nothing against Jackson Chourio. The approach there is really good as well. I just love that he's a left-handed hitter, can really lengthen that lineup, has popped 23 homers, but really went through a dry spell with homers. So now that he's been on a tear, I mean, we're looking at a 30-plus homer a year player as a young left-handed hitting outfielder. I've loved his approach. I love his defense in center field. And I would take, again, there's no wrong answer here. I would take Jackson Merrill over Jackson Chourio if I was picking tomorrow. So then the conversation for me becomes, okay, Jackson Merrill versus Paul Skenes. What a conundrum I'm in at this point. Paul Skenes, Hall of Fame potential, ace of a staff guy. And for me, it comes down to I think I'm taking Jackson Merrill because he's playing every single day. That's what it comes down to. Paul Skenes is going to be an ace of a rotation for a long time to come, hopefully. And you're not wrong if you take Paul Skenes. But I just think I want the player that plays every single day to be on my team. It goes back to me when I was playing video games, and I play video games, and I fantasy draft my team, my organization, and my first pick, I always go offense because I want my best player to be playing every day. And I think this conversation is so close. I think we're splitting hairs so thin that it really comes down to, yeah, there's no wrong answer here. I'm going to take the player that plays every day, and then I'm going to take the player that plays a premium position at an above average level, at an elite level. So give me Jackson Merrill in the conversation of Paul Skenes, Jackson Merrill, Jackson Chourio, but there's no wrong answer. And I'm very interested what everybody thinks here because that's a tough one. But it is the first episode of the week. Obviously, Saturday was Smoltz every single Saturday, and then an episode on Tuesday. Power rankings come out on Monday. So I went for a while. We were just going through the power rankings 10 through 1 as we always were, and then kind of stopped doing them because they come out on Mondays on all social media. And then we were just kind of going through it, but everybody's already seen them. Anyway, I wanted to bring them back. We'll go 10 through 1, and then I'll just talk about some of the big movers and the big changes. But this week's power rankings at 10, the Mets, the Royals at 9, the Orioles at 8, the Guardians at 7, the Brewers at 6, the Padres at 5, Astros at 4, Yankees at 3, Dodgers now down 1 to the 2 spot, and the Philadelphia Phillies are at number 1. So let's start with Mets, down 2 to number 10. Francisco Lindor hurt, got an MRI on Monday. As I'm recording this episode, we're not yet sure the severity of it, but he has been dealing with back issues for a few weeks, ended up coming out of a game over the weekend. They did lose 2 of 3 games to the Phillies. If Francisco Lindor is hurt, the Mets are in trouble. I don't think they're going to beat out the Braves if Lindor ends up hurt and not able to play the rest of the way. They need him to be healthy. They need him to be okay. So I did bump the Mets down 2 spots just because of they needed that weekend series against the Phillies to keep the lead over the Braves, but they lost tough series and Lindor hurt. Royals up 1, Orioles down 3. Orioles have been struggling. Lost 7 of their last 10. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Detroit Tigers, baby, who are right on the cusp of a playoff spot. Also right on the cusp of these power rankings. Tigers just missed out. Best team in baseball over the last month plus. Detroit Tigers, fun fact. But I had them just outside, just behind the Mets. Orioles in a tough situation. They're not playing good baseball, so now you're probably looking at a wild card, unless you can come back and beat the Yankees in the regular season. They're not too far behind, but that gap is expanding. Jackson Holliday is what do you do with him come playoff time? Obviously, I think Jackson Holliday is going to be a great player in baseball. I've talked about him a ton, but better for sure since he came back up, but not that good. So are you plugging him in your playoff lineup? Are you going to get the Royals in round 1 of the playoffs? Can you beat the Royals in round 1 of the playoffs? The Royals are certainly playing better right now. I don't know, but I bumped the Orioles down a good bit just because of their current play. Guardians have stayed the same. Next up, Brewers at number 6, down 3 spots. To explain that, because I put them out on Monday. Everyone says Brewers won their series on the road. They went 4-2 on the week. How do you move them down a few spots? And to answer that, let me talk about the Padres, who are up 4. I love this Padres team. Arguably the best bullpen in baseball. Love their offense. Manny Machado has been top three player in baseball over the last couple of months. Fernando Tatis back and healthy. Jackson Merrill, we just talked about him a ton. Jackson Merrill has been huge for them. Rotation has been solid and holding up. I just when I think Padres, I think they're one of the teams that has a legitimate chance of winning the World Series. So why did I move the Brewers down? You can be mad at me all you want. These are my power rankings. The Brewers necessarily didn't do anything to move down on the week. I think the Padres are a better team than the Brewers. I do. And you can sit there listening or watching and say, wow, I don't see it. How can you say that? I make your own power rankings or tell me they'd be different in yours. I believe the Padres are a better team than the Milwaukee Brewers, so I moved them above. Same with my team that I put it for, up 2 spots, the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros have been the best team in baseball since April 26th. That is the strong majority of the season. Did the Astros have a brutal start to the year? Yes. Was I ridiculed for saying that the Astros are inevitable? Yes. Into May, late May, continued to say it. Was I given a lot of crap about that? Absolutely. Did I continue to believe it? Yes. Since April 26th, there has been no better team in the game of baseball than the Houston Astros. So they've continued to creep back up in the power rankings. They reached the top 10 for the first time a while ago at this point, and have continued to creep up. Do the Padres, do the Brewers, do the Guardians, do the Orioles have a better record than the Houston Astros? Yes. But this isn't about record. Again, if you want standings, go look at the MLB app. We're talking power rankings here, and the Houston Astros are absolutely, in my opinion, a top 5 team in the game of baseball and have been the top team in the game of baseball since April 26th, a long time ago. At number 3, I have the New York Yankees. Yankees spreading that gap a little bit with the Orioles, playing a bit better, so I have them at 3. And the big one up at the top, I did move the Phillies and Dodgers. So Dodgers down 1, the Glasnow injury done for the year, huge pitching issues. Again, the Dodgers have been, if you ask me over the last decade, who's been the best regular season team in baseball? The answer is the Dodgers. If you ask me who's been the best team in baseball over the last decade, the answer is the Astros. Certainly not the Dodgers. The Dodgers can't win in October. And this team, as currently set up, is set up to win in the regular season. They're set to win the NL West. Will they? I don't know. It's getting closer. But again, once again, set up to have a good regular season and an early playoff exit with the rotation that they have. So a bit of a struggle lately. Glasnow injury is huge. Phillies back to the number 1 spot. My World Series pick has been, will be, will always be this year, the Philadelphia Phillies. They're the first team in baseball to 90 wins this year, getting healthier. Harper back to hitting homers. He went 30 days, almost 30 games in a row without hitting a homer, and then he hit 2 in the same game over the weekend. Pitching's great. Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez are going to be huge for them in the playoffs. Chris Sanchez as well. I've loved this Phillies team from the beginning of the year on. Still love them. They're back to playing good baseball just in time, right? They went through a few week stretch of just kind of treading water. Now we're sitting here on September 17th. 12, 13 days from the regular season ending, and the Phillies are starting to roll again just in time for the playoffs. So I do have the Phillies taken in that top spot as well. So those are this week's top 10 power rankings and a little bit of an explanation on why some teams moved and which direction they moved. Before we finish up, we're going to do some fan questions. I got a couple good ones this week. Thank you to everybody that always reaches out, but can only pick a couple. So first one we're going with comes from Disturbed One. Who is your pick as a dark horse that you could see winning the World Series this year? In my mind, I think about all the playoff teams that could win, or just all the playoff teams in general. And I don't know. I could give you a dark horse is going to be a team that just squeaks in, right? Like, are we talking Royals? Are we talking Mets? Are the Braves really a dark horse if they get in? So I don't know if this team is necessarily a dark horse, but give me the San Diego Padres as a team that I think outside of the top, I don't think they have the top 4 odds to win the World Series, but I absolutely think they have a top 4 chance of winning the World Series. That bullpen is the best in baseball. A rotation that can be really good, offense that is really good. I love the Padres. What they're doing, that atmosphere in the playoffs is going to be rocking. So, give me the San Diego Padres as, I guess, if you're considering them a dark horse to win the World Series. Other than that, I just don't see a D-backs type run happening this year, but I didn't last year either. But I think there's a short list. I don't see the Brewers winning. I don't see the Guardians winning. I don't see the Royals winning. I don't, like I I don't think the list is that long this year. I think we're in shape. Look, if you get the top 4 of my power rankings in the CSs this year, how awesome would that be? Phillies, Dodgers, Yankees, Astros. I mean, they're on the short list. Padres are on that short list, but behind them, Brewers, don't see it. Guardians, don't see it. Orioles right now, I'm not seeing it. I have them in the World Series, but Royals, Mets, I don't know. Give me one of those top 5 teams. Honestly, kick the Dodgers out. I don't think the Dodgers are in the World Series, but I'll take the Padres for your question. So thank you for asking. Next one comes from Chris Chinney. We all know that JV is a fierce competitor. He's talking about Justin. We all know that JV is a fierce competitor. I'm sure he'll get it together and be ready for the playoffs. The question is, if he doesn't, does he play one more year or does he retire? He needs that last season tour that all future Hall of Famers get. I hope he comes back, especially with the Astros. Justin ain't retiring. You kidding me? Absolutely not going to retire. I think the last start, I was at his start in Anaheim a couple days ago over the weekend. Saturday night, was there. Thought that was a step in the right direction. Again, this is his spring training. I thought that was a step in the right direction. After that tough first inning, got a lot more outs, ended up giving up 2 runs on 5 innings, struck out a couple guys. I thought he really settled in and looked better. And he'll get another start or 2 before the playoffs start. I think he's going to be a guy for them in the playoffs. I still do that. I had a long discussion about it on last week's episode on what the Astros should do with him. I think he has a role in the playoffs, and I absolutely think he's pitching next year. He ain't retiring. I just don't see that happening yet. I still think he's got a lot of outs to get in the big leagues, a lot of wins still to come, and we'll see what happens and where it happens. But yeah, went down to Angel Stadium on Saturday, had a great time. Went down with my girlfriend Elizabeth and her sister, and hung out with my brother and sister-in-law and niece after. It's just such a good time down there, and good for him to get a win. Good to see him get that win back on the mound for the Astros, and a big game. So big week ahead. Everything's big at this point. There's less than 2 weeks left of the regular season. There's still a couple things up for grabs. The AL wild card, Detroit Tigers, baby, as we speak, 2.5 out of a playoff spot. Essentially 3.5, though, because they do not own the tiebreaker over the Minnesota Twins, but that is a race. NL wildcard race is obviously still up for grabs. Braves, Mets there. I think NL West is still up for grabs. Padres 3.5 as we're speaking behind the Dodgers. That's up for grabs. But other than that, I think AL West, I think the Astros are going to hold on there. A lot of the other divisions are, but we got drama coming down the stretch. Stay tuned here. Make sure you're subscribed, following wherever you listen. That does really help. Please hit that follow, subscribe button. Leave a 5-star review if you want. Leave a comment on YouTube. Like it on YouTube. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. It's free to do that. Our Flippin' Bats Pod YouTube channel. You can watch every single episode as well. Always appreciate everyone that watches. And follow us on all social media at Flippin' Bats Pod everywhere. Put out some really cool stuff from throughout the episodes on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that good stuff. So check it out. Enjoy the week. Saturday with Smoltz coming up. You guessed it, Saturday. We also had it last Saturday. Talked about Justin's role in the playoffs. Talked about the craziest contract offer that he ever received from the Phillies, which he almost accepted. It was so crazy. Go listen to that if you haven't yet. But until then, we'll see you Saturday. Have a great week of baseball. And remember, everyone, find your bat and flip it. Peace.